Big paychecks, big failures, big plans. I wonder which one of these is bigger. Are there monster failures? Monster paychecks? I don't know, but there's big plans, that's for sure. Welcome to How to Switch to a Tech Career in Your 30s and 40s. It's the podcast where we love to get excited and down to brass tacks, talking about the real things that help you move the needle when you switch from any other career into a high-tech or IT career. And this is where we're going to discuss the real hints, tips, tricks, and the methods and the protocol that help you switch into a real tech career. So welcome. Well, we are going to discuss some things today that you may not be prepared for, just because talking about failures is never exciting, but it is something that, if we avoid, it's just going to make things worse. But let's start off with talking about big paychecks, because one of the reasons that people try to get into a tech career and make the switch is because they want a bigger paycheck. And I can tell you right off the bat that having a bigger paycheck is a definite huge draw to a career in technology. If you're coming from a coffee serving career like I was, I honestly cannot say that I was in a career of serving coffee, but without things changing, that would have been me for sure. I was also, before I switched to tech, also selling real estate, teaching real estate, working as a pastor, and all of these things. Let's see, what else? I was teaching violin lessons. I still do that on the side. That's fun. All of those things added up to a sort of paycheck. And it was enough at the time to, pay the bills. But as you can imagine, it was a lot of scurrying around and changing of times and modulating my schedule to meet demands, and sometimes wondering where a paycheck was. So let me give you a little bit of a preview of, let's say it was a prequel. There we go. A prequel to me getting into a tech career. What I was doing that was techie was creating websites. So I was making websites for people who either paid me, never wanted to pay me, or told me they were going to pay me and they didn't. So all these categories, I was making websites for George Furwer, Operation Mobilization. I was, and I still help with that. His organization lives on. He's passed now. And I was making websites for apartment complexes. I say that very liberally. I think I got one client or two, and I was making, and they would pay me. And then I was making websites. I made a website, maybe two websites, like a sample and hey, try this, for a guy who was going around teaching people at apartment complexes, teaching apartment managers how to make more money and how to manage their apartments. And I was doing that, and I made a website. It took like a month. It was the biggest contract I ever had. And after a month of work, like day in, night in, every day, every night I was working on this, he told me that the check was in the mail. This is back when checks were in the mail. And I never got the check. A couple days later, he said, "Oh, I was traveling. Let me FedEx it to you." And I never got that. I said, it's like a 1 in a million thing that a check gets lost in FedEx. And he said, "Well, I don't know what happened, but let me send another one." And he sent it, but never got to me. And I'm telling you, I wasn't like living in a cave or overseas. This guy was I think he was in Idaho. I don't think it was Utah. Oh, no, he was in Montana. Yeah, so yeah, he never paid me. So I went to court and I was just so naive. I won the court case, but I won the court case in Iowa. And then the judge says, "Well, to collect this, you're going to have to go sue him for it over in Montana too." I said, I'm not doing that, but I learned a hard lesson and I got some advice from others who were in tech as well. And they said, you got to make sure you collect money up front. So I think, have I bled over to the big failures part of this yet? I think I have. I'm in my own little office here looking around to see if anyone's noticed, but you've probably noticed I'm into big failures. So if you are preparing to switch to a tech career and you're doing a lot of work and you're doing some work for other people, which I highly recommend, that's what I did, then make sure if they say they're going to pay for it, get at least 1/3 of the payment up front. So after that client, I did that. Now I did get a job within, I think it was within 2 months of that client not paying me. I think I got a job in tech doing websites. So that was a huge lesson for me to learn, and I hope that you learn it right now instead of going through that. If you make sites, apps, project management tools, marketing efforts on Facebook or other social media, TikTok, or you put together ads and you're a creative and you're trying to get that as a full-time job, I suggest you collect payments up front. So anyway, that's kind of what I did to get into tech and got me some experience, real life experience, without having a job. And obviously, if I could have done that full time, I think I would have, but I had a family. Maybe you have a family and you like that consistent paycheck instead of having to go and sell services all the time and build up an entire company. So maybe that's for you. Maybe you're good at that. But otherwise, you're probably trying to switch to a tech career by getting help. That's why you're listening to this podcast. You probably have a family or you have loved ones and you're trying to take care of them by switching to a tech career in your 30s or 40s. All right, so I robbed the big failures portion of this episode. Let's go back to big paychecks. You will get a bigger paycheck in tech, but you may not get it immediately. For me, I told you the messy situation I was in before I got my tech job. I was doing all of those quote unquote full-time jobs, but I was doing them all as a side job. And I still couldn't quite make ends meet. I mean, it was fine. But when I got my first tech job, I increased my salary by 25%, my annual income by 25%. So what that means is, and that sounds like a lot, but when you're not making a lot, it's not a lot. Let's just pretend that I was making $10,000 per year, which I was not. I'm not going to tell you how much I was making. It wasn't a lot more than that. Hint, hint. But let's just say 10,000, then 25% increase of that is 2,500 more. So from 10,000 to 12,500. And I was obviously making more than that, but it's not a lot when you get a 25% increase, and the amount of cash you receive at the end of the year is not a lot. So your first tech job may pay better. Now, after a year into your first tech job, if you're doing really well and you deserve it, you could increase your salary even more. And in my situation, I got, I compared to my original pre-tech job, a year into my tech job, I was almost doubling what I had before. So it was probably like a 40% increase over what I was making before my first tech job. So I think I leveled up and got a raise, became sort of a operations manager in a small startup company. And after that, there were some hiccups. 2008 hit. Yes, I am older. 2008 crashed the economy. Um, and I was making websites at a company for banks. Even those community banks, it hit hard. So I was let go, and there was some tough times. But after those tough times, I did do a couple contracts, but then I got a job, and that job was more than double what I was making before I got into tech. And then nowadays, the percentages are just, they're off the chart percentages what I make today compared to back then. All that to say, it takes a little bit of time. But one thing to really increase your salary, I'll give you one example of a client I had who was already in tech. And of course, I help people who are trying to switch into a tech career. And I also help people who are in a tech career, but they don't know what to do next to really help themselves. And so someone reached out to me from Iowa, and he said, "Hey, Brooks, this was the start of me helping people, really." He reached out and said, "Hey, what can I do? I'm really overworked. I'm thinking about doing a contract somewhere, but I don't know about that. How do I handle the taxes? How do I handle the insurance?" And I told him the hints that I had, and some of the failures I had had, and helped him that way. And then he contacted me again, and we went through sort of a few trainings and really encouraged him to level up and take a risk and do it. And he ended up doing that. And I think he increased his salary by 24%. And that was a big increase. That was a lot of cash increase, especially for a family that he had. So that was a situation where making just a few moves while you're inside of your tech career can really level you up. And so I've had a good mix of clients now come to me who are switching into tech and they get into tech, and others who are in tech and they don't know how to really let go of the chair they're in. They're a little bit fearful, and rightfully so, of losing what they have as they look for that next monkey bar to grab onto and shift their life up a little bit, level up. So all that to say, if you are trying to switch into a tech career to increase your income, this can happen. This can happen right away. Most of my clients, to be frank, they slightly increase their income right away. Like on day one of their new tech job, they slightly have increased their income. And as the years have gone by, just a few years have gone by now, I have noticed that they gradually keep increasing their income because something happens when you become the type of person that can make the plans. We'll talk about those, and keep the plans and keep a schedule. You carry that with you into your tech job. People notice that. And you start to become someone who levels up. And you know how to do it. So it's so exciting to watch people increase their income. But more than that, of course, what do we want money for? Just to sit on it? No. Just to take these huge vacations? No. We want to provide for our families and for our loved ones. And yes, use some extra income. We want to help others as well. We want to give. We want to take care of what God's given us and give back, and then help others as well, including our families, neighbors, all that. So there is a passage in the Bible. I don't know the verse right off the bat, and I can't quote it, but it implies that the opposite of stealing is providing for yourself and giving to others. So the opposite of stealing is not just not stealing, I think, from that verse, but working hard and being able to have enough for yourself, but giving. And so have enough and to give. You can give even if you don't have a lot of money, but it's really hard to give when you're not making the income that you could have if you worked a little harder. Okay, so that's about big paychecks. Let's talk about some big failures. I originally called this nuclear misses, but then I thought it sounds like a really problematic girlfriend or nuclear missiles. So I changed it to big failures. So one of the biggest failures after getting my tech job, in case you are trying to level up and you're going to take a huge contract, here's one of the big mistakes I made that could save you a lot of money and time and worry. And that is, I did not take into consideration the tax consequences of making a lot of money on an hourly contract. So when you increase your income by a lot, and that could be 10%, depending, it just depends where you're at in the tax brackets here in America, at least in the United States. So when you get a lot of money, you've got to be careful that you might be now your income might be sitting and straddling several tax brackets, and that's what happened to me. And so after certain tax brackets, you've got a portion of your income that's taxed at the higher level, and you could be straddling several in tech because you're going to make more money. And when that happens, you've got to know what you're doing with your taxes. So do a lot of research on your own and talk to a tax professional. Also, beware that if you don't do this, what's going to happen is you're going to owe money to the government. And so I've been through that. I know what that feels like for many years, to pay back the government and just to be honest and do that. So another mistake I made, this is before tech, is doing 1099 jobs and then not taking care of taxes that way. As you can tell, taxes are a big deal here in the United States. If you're not in the United States, it just is a big deal here. When I then went to a tax professional the first time, this is before I got into tech, I said, I don't know what to do with my taxes. I showed him all my taxes. I think he charged me I think it was $2,000 he charged me, and then also said I owed back taxes. So to this day, I think he made a mistake because everyone I've talked to said, no, that was wrong. But be careful of the tax professional you get. So that was a very money-hungry tax professional, a huge company handling taxes. That's who I went to. I don't know if I'd recommend that. Then, after I was in tech, I do my own taxes. I decided to go into a tax professional and get some advice. And the tax professional said, we can't talk about the options I have for you right here. Let's schedule a meeting outside the office. And I said, what do you mean? Schedule a meeting outside the office. And she leaned over the table and she goes, keep your voice down. We need to talk about some of these things outside. And I said, what? And then she kept whispering. She said, if you can take some money out of your mortgage and cash and put it under your bed. And she's telling me this in the tax office. I felt like it was in a movie. And she said, put it under your bed. Don't tell anyone. I said, isn't that unethical? And she said, that was the end of the conversation. I'm not saying everyone at H&R Block is like that, but that person was at H&R Block. So, and I will say, just to cover myself here, that was not H&R Block. That was an individual in a cubicle who probably isn't there anymore. So I have had good experiences with H&R Block before, but that one was very interesting. So be careful of your taxes. All right. Also, before your job, one of the biggest mistakes you can make before you get into tech is pretending that you don't need to plan your schedule to make the switch. You need to create a plan, a reverse engineered plan to make the switch into tech. And if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to fizzle out and crash. In other words, taking time to plan your time will save you time. Taking time to plan your time will save you time. The only people who don't take time to plan their time are the people who don't think that they need to save time. They think that they can just rush into something and get it done quickly and it's going to work. And there is a saying, fools rush in. I think that is true, especially in things that take time to do, such as make a switch to a tech career or level up your own tech career into a new one, a new income category or type of job. So make the time to plan out your time. Get out a piece of paper and put it down in front of you. And if you're stuck and you don't know what to do, what I would recommend, and I got this from, GTD, Getting Things Done. I think his name is Dan Sullivan. I watched a video and saw this. And if you're stuck, then take out a piece of paper and do this. And let's just pretend I'm painting my house. All right. And that was a huge thing I was putting off. And so I got out a piece of paper and did this. I pretended that I had an assistant who was going to do the thing for me. So I wrote down on the piece of paper, paint the house, and then the first task. The first task is take a paint chip off of the house into the paint store and compare it and find the color of paint to paint the front of my house. I wrote that all down and put a little underline at the front of it, a place where it could be checked off when it's done. And I put down my pen and the paper and I stood up. And then I thought, and this is part of the process, by the way, I'm not going crazy. But then I thought, well, I don't have an assistant, so I might as well just do this right now. So I took up the paper and went out and got a paint chip off the front of the house and took it into the store. And I loved checking it off. So if you're procrastinating making plans, it's really hard to make plans. Guys, it's really hard to make plans when you think that it's going to be a lot of work. So take out a piece of paper and do that. You might put down on the piece of paper, to my assistant, and then put a little underline and then write this task. Plan the next 7 days with daily tasks in order to accomplish the certification, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to do. Plan out the next 90 days. You can write that. You could write, create 90-day goal, 60-day goal, 30-day goal, and 14-day tasks. Any of those things are great options for making some plans. If you haven't made plans, then you're being foolish, because switching into a tech career, unless you're a genius, is going to take some time and it is going to be tough. So that's what I would recommend, is making plans. These plans go right hand in hand with another failure. And so let me probably end this episode with this: big plans and a big failure. During the interviewing process, let's just back up from that. During the job application process that you're going to be in, or you already are in, maybe you're struggling with that. If you're not tracking your progress, if you're not tracking the resumes and keeping them in different folders for every time you apply to a job, if you're not keeping like a scorecard for daily, how many applications did I put in today? If you're not doing those sort of things and tracking your actions, then you possibly also aren't a planner. And this could end up in a big failure, because you're going to get excited about getting into tech, And then you're not going to be excited. And guess which attitude or emotion is going to stop all your plans? So you'll be discouraged and you'll stop applying. But if you have a daily plan, if you have at least one task to do each day that lines up and builds up towards this huge day when you actually get your job, if you can plan out your tasks and do them, you're going to get momentum in personal action. You're going to get consistency and be persistent in this. And to be frank, that's all that I do with my clients. I'm a strategic advisor, yes. I've been through this process. I've seen many people go through it. But the number one thing we do is plan and persist. And then at the end, we present. So that's the P3 diagnostic that I have. You perform, you plan, you persist, and essentially you present yourself. So there's a lot of different P words there, but the planning is the first thing we do. And then persisting on that plan is extremely crucial. So a huge mistake you could make is just going by your emotion in this entire process. Plan. And if it's hard to plan, get out a piece of paper, pretend that you have an assistant, write down the task you need to do, which is planning. Step aside, come back, and here's this little task on a piece of paper that says I need to plan the next 30 days. And I don't have an assistant, so I might as well do this myself. Do that sort of thing. And I promise you're going to start to see some more momentum and progress. So that is the show today. Thank you for listening. And I hope to help you out in the future. If you have any comments about the show, you can always leave a comment. And if you're interested in anything that I've said today, feel free to reach out as well. info@tekleed.com. techlead.com, spelled weird. I appreciate you, the listener. You took time to join this podcast and listen to the things that I've said. So I want to just say thank you. If you check the show notes, you will notice a couple links there. And one of them is to be an interviewee on this podcast. You can do it using your name. We can interview you, give you some coaching. You can also do that interview anonymously with an ID so that you won't be found out at your current job. So we want to be sensitive to you in that way, but also give you some help. So check the link for that application and for other free information. Join us next time. Thanks again for listening.